Your home does not need to become a fortress. The garden can remain open. Light can still enter the windows. You can still see the sky, the trees, and the parts of the neighborhood you enjoy. You can own a perfectly good backyard and still avoid using it because of one uncomfortable view. Perhaps a neighbor's raised deck looks down toward your table. Maybe a shared walkway passes close to the patio. Nobody is necessarily watching you, but every time you sit outside, you feel exposed. So you begin measuring the yard. You price fencing, count panels, and imagine covering 30 or 40 feet of property. Before long, one awkward view has become an expensive construction project. But here is the part most people miss. You may not need 30 feet of fencing. A 5-foot panel in the right position can sometimes give you more useful privacy than a tall barrier at the far end of the yard. That is what happened to Brenda. She lived in a townhouse with a small corner patio. The patio itself was pleasant, but her round dining table could be seen from a raised deck behind the neighboring property. Brenda wanted the problem solved before her daughter's birthday lunch. By the time I visited, she had already measured the open side of the yard and planned to order 6 matching divider panels. She had measured 28 feet of patio. What she had not measured was the actual view. Before she ordered anything, we flattened a large shipping box and stood it between 2 patio chairs. It was not attractive, but it was large enough to show us where a permanent panel might work. We first placed it near the edge of the property, where Brenda assumed the new barrier belonged. The neighboring deck was still visible above it. Then we moved the same piece of cardboard closer to the dining area and slightly to one side. Brenda sat down again. The deck disappeared from view. The cardboard had not become taller. We had not added another panel. We had simply put it where it interrupted the angle between Brenda's table and the raised deck. In the end, she installed one narrow lattice divider properly anchored beside the patio instead of enclosing the entire open boundary. At her daughter's lunch, the yard still felt open. People could walk through it, the plants still received light, and Brenda could still see the rest of her garden. But the dining table no longer felt exposed. She had not hidden the whole yard. She had protected the part of it where her family actually gathered. Why could one narrow divider succeed where 6 panels along the boundary might still have failed? The answer is not simply height, price, or material. It is placement. We will test that principle with nothing more than a chair and a piece of cardboard when we reach number 1. First, however, let us begin with the smallest exposed area in many homes, a single window that needs privacy without losing all its daylight. Number 6 is removable frosted window film. Think about the narrow pane beside a front door, the bathroom window facing a walkway, or the glass above a bathtub where the blinds remain closed from morning until night. The opening may be small, but if it sits in the wrong place, the entire room can feel uncomfortable. Before replacing the glass or hanging a heavy curtain, a removable privacy film may be enough. It breaks up the view through the pane while allowing natural light to enter. For a small window, that can solve the problem without making the room feel shut in. Just do not trust the first test. A film that looks perfectly private in daylight may reveal a recognizable silhouette after dark when the room behind it is brightly lit. Once the film is installed, turn on the indoor lights and look at the window from outside. If you can still recognize a person clearly, replace it with a denser privacy pattern or add an opaque covering where it is needed. Do not stack multiple layers unless the manufacturer specifically says the product can be installed that way. Preparation makes the difference between a clean result and a film that begins lifting at the corners. First, Confirm that the product is suitable for your type of glass. Then clean the pane thoroughly. Measure it before cutting and follow the installation instructions supplied with the film. Many removable films are applied to lightly misted glass and smoothed outward from the center with a plastic card. Work slowly around the edges because dust, trapped air, and rough trimming are what usually make an inexpensive film look temporary. This is a good solution when the entire problem is contained inside one pane of glass. A patio or balcony presents a different challenge. There is no glass to cover, and whatever you hang must remain useful when the air begins to move. For that, consider number 5. Number 5 is an outdoor fabric panel, usually 2 overlapping curtains rather than one thin sheet pulled tightly across an opening. Fabric is useful when the house already provides a safe place to hang it, such as a sturdy pergola beam, a covered patio frame, or an approved balcony structure. It can soften a space without making it feel as though you have built another wall. But fabric has 2 weaknesses: light and wind. Hold a pale curtain flat against bright afternoon sun, and it may become far more transparent than it looked inside the store. Leave a single narrow panel hanging in a breeze, and it can swing aside at exactly the wrong moment. 2 panels with a generous overlap work better. Make them wider than the opening so they hang in loose folds. Those folds interrupt the view, and the overlap prevents a vertical gap from appearing whenever one panel moves. Before buying, hold a sample toward the brightest light the patio receives. If you can see clear shapes through it, choose a denser outdoor material. The lower edge also needs attention. Use weights or restraints designed for outdoor curtains and compatible with the hanging system. Avoid improvising with heavy objects that can swing, fall, or strike someone when the wind rises. A little movement is normal. Violent flapping is a warning that the panels need to be opened, removed, or secured according to the manufacturer's instructions. Bring them inside during severe weather. Never hang them from gutters, weak trim, or decorative pieces that were not designed to carry the load. And there is no reason to curtain the entire patio. Cover the opening between the seating area and the particular window, balcony, or walkway causing the discomfort. When privacy is unnecessary, the panels can be drawn aside and the space opened again. Of course, fabric only works when you have something reliable above it. If there is no beam or frame in the right area, the next solution rises from the ground. Number 4 is a small group of tall planters arranged in a shallow zigzag. Most people place their pots in one straight row because it looks tidy from the front. Then someone approaches from an angle, and every gap between the plants opens like a window. A staggered arrangement closes those gaps more effectively. Place the first container slightly forward, the second a little farther back, and the third forward again. The foliage overlaps instead of standing in separate columns. You are creating layers, not drawing a border. 3 well-placed containers near a dining table can be more useful than 10 pots scattered along the far edge of the property. Tall containers help because they lift the foliage to a useful height immediately. You do not have to wait several years for a plant to grow from ground level. Broad branching plants generally provide more coverage than one narrow stem, but choose them for the conditions you actually have. A plant that hates the local climate or the amount of sunlight on your patio will not remain a privacy solution for long. Artificial plants remove the watering problem, but they bring their own limitations. Indoor decorative leaves can fade, crack, or come loose outdoors, so check that the material is intended for exterior exposure. Whichever option you use, do not create a top-heavy hazard. Choose containers with wide, stable bases. Provide drainage for living plants. Account for the weight of wet soil and keep tall arrangements away from narrow walkways where they could tip toward children or pets. Move the empty containers into position before filling them. Small adjustments are much easier while each pot is still light. When the leaves overlap the troublesome view, stop. Adding more plants will not necessarily improve the result. Planters are helpful because they bring their own support. But many yards already contain a sound chain-link fence, railing, or wire panel in roughly the right place. If yours does, number 3 may let you use that structure instead of adding another one. Number 3 is to add visual coverage to a sturdy fence or railing you already own. A chain-link fence clearly marks the edge of a yard, yet it does almost nothing to soften the view through it. An open railing has the same problem. Sometimes the framework is not the problem. The empty space inside it is. Faux ivy garlands can cover narrow or irregular areas. Boxwood-style mats and exterior screening rolls handle wider sections more quickly. Whatever you choose, resist the temptation to stretch a small amount of material across a large area. Sparse greenery leaves obvious strips of metal showing through it. From a distance, it looks unfinished. From a seated position, those openings may line up and defeat the purpose entirely. Begin with the most exposed section and build enough overlap to break up the view. Step back occasionally and inspect it from the area you use, not only while standing beside the fence. Use exterior rated fasteners that blend with the material. Secure the top, bottom, and several points through the middle so the covering cannot peel away whenever the wind changes direction. Do not tighten the fasteners so aggressively that they damage the backing. Leave the installation adjustable and inspect it from time to time for fading, loose ties, and trapped debris. There is also a structural issue people often overlook. Dense greenery, reed rolls, and solid-looking mats catch more wind than an open fence. Before covering a large section, make sure the existing posts and attachments can tolerate the additional load. If the fence moves, leans, or already needs repair, do not ask decorative material to turn it into a sail. This method will not strengthen a damaged fence, block meaningful noise, or provide security. Its job is much simpler. Reduce visibility through a sound structure that is already there. You may only need to treat one concentrated section. If there is no suitable structure in the required location, however, greenery and fabric have nothing safe to attach to. That is when a freestanding divider earns its place. Number 2 is one modular freestanding divider. The word "one" matters. People often see an exposed patio and immediately imagine a continuous wall. They purchase several panels before discovering that the first one was never in the correct position. Begin with a single manageable section. The facing can be lattice, exterior mesh, reed screening, slats, or overlapping greenery. Choose the appearance that suits the house, but do not confuse decorative covering with structural support. The frame, fasteners, and base must be made for outdoor conditions. This is not the place to balance a tall panel inside one shallow flower pot and hope the soil will hold it upright. A 5 or 6 foot divider can catch a surprising amount of wind even when the material contains openings. Use a properly designed wide base, suitable anchors, or an approved connection to a sound structure. Keep the panel movable only while testing the location. Once its position is chosen, stabilize it according to its size, material, and local conditions. Check local rules before installing anything tall or permanent, especially near shared boundaries, access routes, or utility areas. A modular design has one major advantage: you can add another section later. You do not have to purchase the entire project on the first day. Install one divider, use the patio, and notice whether any troublesome angle remains. If a second module is truly necessary, you will know exactly where it belongs. This is the type of solution Brenda used beside her dining table. Her divider did not stretch across the property. It was one narrow lattice module, securely supported near the place where her family sat. Its usefulness came less from the amount of material than from the position we found with that ugly piece of cardboard. And that brings us to number 1, the rule that determines whether every other idea in this video succeeds or fails. Number 1 is the sightline placement rule. It costs nothing to test, and it can prevent the most expensive mistake in the entire project. Begin by sitting exactly where you want privacy. Do not stand in the center of the yard. Do not walk along the fence and try to judge the view from there. Sit in the chair. Your eye level changes when you sit down, and the troublesome angle changes with it. Now identify one specific point that makes the area feel exposed. It might be an upstairs window, the corner of a raised deck, a gate, or a section of public walkway. Do not try to solve every possible view at once. Choose the one that actually prevents you from enjoying the space. Next, make a temporary test panel. A flattened cardboard box is often enough. You can also use an old sheet secured safely between two stable supports. This is only a mock-up. It does not need to look good or remain outdoors. Have someone move it while you stay seated. Start where you originally assumed the permanent barrier should go. Then bring the temporary panel closer to the area you are protecting. Move it slightly left or right until the exposed point disappears. You may find that the same piece of cardboard becomes dramatically more effective as it approaches your table or chair. There is a simple reason. Hold one finger close to your eye, and it can hide a large object across the room. Move your finger farther away, and the object appears around it again. Your finger did not shrink. Its position changed how much of your view it occupied. A privacy divider follows the same geometry. A modest panel placed near a seating area may interrupt the entire line between that area and an elevated window. Put the same panel at the far boundary, and the window may remain visible above or beside it. That is why height alone can be misleading. A tall fence in the wrong place may cover many feet of yard without protecting the chair you use. A shorter divider nearby can block that particular angle while leaving the rest of the garden open. Once the temporary panel appears to work, test every position that matters. Move to the other end of the table. Sit in the second chair. If you use the patio at night, check the view again when the outdoor and indoor lights are on. Where it is safe and permitted, have another person check from the walkway, deck, or window causing the concern. A photograph taken from that position can reveal openings that are difficult to judge from inside the patio. Do not enter neighboring property without permission. And do not assume that hiding the window from your own view has solved every possible angle. Adjust the mock-up until it protects the area that genuinely needs protection. Then mark the location. Only after that test should you choose the finished material. A window may need film. A covered patio may suit overlapping fabric. An open corner may call for planters. An existing fence may only need fuller coverage. A space with no support may require one properly anchored freestanding divider. The material comes after the angle. Brenda nearly bought 6 panels because she had measured the open edge of her patio. The cardboard test showed that she only needed 1. She had been preparing to cover the yard. What she actually needed to cover was the view. Before spending money on privacy, remember one simple rule. Measure the view, not just the yard. Sit where ordinary life happens. Find the particular window, deck, gate, or walkway that makes the space uncomfortable. Test it with cardboard, then choose the smallest, safe solution that interrupts that angle. Your home does not need to become a fortress. The garden can remain open. Light can still enter the windows. You can still see the sky, the trees, and the parts of the neighborhood you enjoy. You are only removing the view that keeps you from using your own space. That was the difference for Brenda. One properly positioned divider gave her something 6 panels along the boundary might not have provided. A dining table where her family could relax. Which part of your home feels exposed? A patio, a hot tub, or a window? Tell me in the comments. And when you are ready for another practical home fix, watch the next video on your screen.